Now, America's healthcare advocate, Kerry Hall.
Hi, I'm Kerry Hall, America's healthcare advocate, and I want to talk to you today about Alzheimer's and the new Alzheimer's drugs. So, as you may know, a number of companies have tried and failed with multiple drugs to help solve the Alzheimer's disease problem. So, the amyloid plaque, which is what collects in the brain that causes Alzheimer's, is the problem. And what these drugs, what they're trying to do is find a drug that breaks it down, prevents it, or slows it. So we've already had one drug that was put in play that did just that. And that drug was produced by Biogen. And what it did was it reduced the levels of the amyloid plaque. It was approved by the FDA. And here's what happened. Okay, Medicaid, Medicare, and the VA, the Veterans Administration, the largest health insurance plans in the country run by the federal government, all three of those, Medicare, Medicaid, and the VA, Veterans Administration, refused to pay for it. So what happened was, even though this drug worked for about 30% of the people, Biogen then pulled the drug off the market because they couldn't sell it. Nobody was buying it. Now, what's interesting is private health insurers were paying for the drug. You had to go through a process to get approval, but you could get approval and you could get the drug. But when you realize that the majority of people that have Alzheimer's are typically 65 plus, those of us that are chronologically challenged, right? The largest number of people that are in that category, everybody's on Medicare, okay? Or if you're a veteran, okay, and you're 65 or below, whatever the case may be, because you can get Alzheimer's at a much earlier age, if the VA says they're not going to pay for it, then you don't have access to the medication. So now there's a brand new drug coming out. Actually, there are two, from Biogen's Eisai company, and then also from Eli Lilly. They've got two brand new drugs coming out. And they're being closely watched. They think they're going to do some good. They also slow the process. They don't cure, but they slow the process. But we're back to the same discussion again. This is the issue. Will those drugs, after they're approved by the FDA, they're now in trials, will those drugs be approved by CMS, the VA, and Medicaid to be available to people? And here's why I bring this up. There's a huge section of people in this country that want to see government-sponsored health care. Well, we have government-sponsored health care. We have three programs. We have Medicare, we have the VA, and we have Medicaid. And this is what you get when you have government-sponsored health care. You don't get to make that decision. You can't appeal a CMS decision. CMS decides it's not going to be covered. Okay, it's not going to be covered. That means Medicare says we're not covering it, it's not covering it. Now, let's take that scenario and contrast that with private health insurance. So private health insurance tells you, no, we're not going to give you the drug. Well, you have an appeal process. There's a three-stage process where you go twice to the carrier and ask them to reconsider. If they choose not to do that, you go to the insurance commissioner in your state and you file a complaint, and then the insurance commissioner steps in and they make the decision. They make the decision as to whether the carrier is going to pay for it or not. When you have government-sponsored health care, that right, that ability is taken away from you. So here's my message. Be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it, okay? And we're talking about one specific issue here. But remember what's going to happen. These drugs are developed. They cost literally millions and millions and millions of dollars to develop. And the reason they're developed, obviously, is so the pharmaceutical companies can sell these drugs and they make a profit on them. And, we all like to throw rocks at the pharmaceutical companies. Well, let's take a look at what happened with COVID. The mRNA vaccines that were produced by Moderna, Pfizer, and Johnson & Johnson in this country that were 93, 97% effective made a huge difference. They were done under the Warp Speed program during President Trump's term. What happens when you take away the incentive for pharmaceutical companies to create new drugs? They don't create them, right? So there's not going to be any progress, whether we're talking about a new drug for Alzheimer's or whether we're talking about a new drug for diabetes. Whatever the case may be, when you take this incentive away from the pharmaceutical companies by letting the government decide what they're going to pay for and what they're not, you wind up changing the whole way we develop medications in this country that are breakthroughs for diseases and chronic illnesses that we have. So once again, back to the topic, we've got two new drugs being developed for Alzheimer's. The question is, once they're approved by FDA and they're going to be approved for, it depends on the number of people that they help. The last drug that I just talked about with Biogen was about 34% of the people. But for that 33 or 34%, that was a big deal. If you had Alzheimer's and it was an early stage and you could take that medication and it slowed it down, that was a really big deal. Well, now you can't get it because it's off the market. This is the problem when you start talking about 100% government-sponsored healthcare. I'm Kerry Hall, and those are my thoughts on the new Alzheimer's medication and what would happen if we go to a Medicare for All system. I hope you've enjoyed watching. Thank you.